Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have a very exciting review because we have a figure from a company we've only ever reviewed one time prior on the channel. This is from Aulita Heroes, and this is their Styracosaurus. And it's incredibly cool to now have a second figure from them, and what I love now, which would obviously confirm something for us, is obviously Aulita Heroes has a very specific style to their figures, where they kind of make them exaggerated and in their own vision and own image, and I really like that because the previous Tyrannosaurus had kind of like that vintage old school look, but at the same time a very interesting and different appearance to it compared to what you would normally see even for articulated dinosaur figures. So having this Styracosaurus here now, giving us an idea of what the line will look like overall, is extremely cool, and I must say that I can't even begin to tell you how impressed I am, because the overall, appearance of this Styracosaurus is incredibly cool. The sculptor for Aulita Heroes honestly is a genius when it comes to creating these dinosaurs in a way where they look so exaggerated, but in the absolute coolest way possible. And again, we had the T-Rex the first time around. We now have our first herbivore with a Styracosaurus here, and it looks insanely cool. Again, following that same style of articulation like we saw on the T-Rex, where you have kind of like those little slight areas of separation and stuff for the joints and everything. Very much so the style, I would say, at this point of Aulita Heroes, but I will also say that the articulation on this is super smooth, and I would love to see some stop motion videos created like this, like even a stop motion movie entirely with just the Aulita Heroes line of dinosaur figures would be incredibly cool. I could just imagine if you gave it like the 80s theme and like an 80s soundtrack and stuff, and a slightly vintage sort of a look. These dinosaur models would fit so perfectly in that theme. But again, it looks extremely cool. I'm really happy to now have a herbivore here from Aulita Heroes. So without further ado, let's jump to a closer look at this right now. So starting up here at the head sculpt of our Styracosaurus, again, you can really get the overall feel and the overall appearance straight away from this Styracosaurus being an Aulita Heroes figure. You can see that the skin texture looks really cool. We definitely have quite a bit going on. You have some ridges that run down here along the lower jaw. You can see them kind of leading here along the underside of the jaw. You can also see as you lead up here into the upper part of the head, and again, the frill of our Styracosaurus, it is absolutely overloaded with all sorts of spikes and just insane amounts of detail throughout. You can see everywhere. This almost looks like a kaiju version of a Styracosaurus. Like, I could just imagine this being some sort of like a mountain range, and then one day it rises up out of the ground, and turns out it's actually a really cool Styracosaurus. That's kind of what, I take away from the overall visual, and they've done a very good job of painting it out as well. You can see many different tones of color have been added, really subtle application of the paint with very slight paint differences throughout as far as different tones of color. Even leading up here into the nasal horn, you can see we have variations of browns and grays and all kinds of color leading up there to the tip of the horn. You can also see the nostrils are sculpted out right there, the beak as well. I love how the beak just has that gritty feel to it. Like, you can see it's just kind of jagged as it leads out. It's not like a perfectly formed beak or anything like that. It looks, again, fits the style so perfectly of having that almost eerie, almost creepy kind of a look, and I absolutely love that. Again, super cool. You can see as you move through, it just looks, again, so much so like it would be some member of an 80s film, in my opinion, or, again, a kaiju-like version of a Styracosaurus. Obviously, you can see we have an articulated jaw, which you can close. You can also open. You can see the inside of the mouth does sport the tongue in there. A little hard to get in there because the mouth's kind of small, but it does have the tongue sculpted out in there. I don't know if we can really see it. It's a little too dark to get in there to see anything else detail-wise. You can also see that the head sculpt looks great over here. Again, the horn and everything looks really nice. You have some more variation of color, all kinds of those ridges and everything leading off here. And what's interesting is the eye. The overall appearance to the figure is very dark and kind of gloomy. You can see the eye is very black except for just one little tiny spot of white right there. in the eye. It is present on this eye, but it's a little harder to see, a little more obvious on this side, but that definitely highlights that little spot quite nicely, and I think also adds to the overall creepy sort of appearance to the Styracosaurus. As you again lead up here onto the top of the head, you can see that we've applied some nice dry brushing techniques, as well as, again, variations of colors. You can see all sorts of variations of browns and even lighter kind of like light grays as you lead out toward the tips. You can also see that there's even like reddish browns included. So tons of color variation for the frill area of our Styracosaurus. As you continue to move along, you can again see that we have very nice, very smooth neck articulation. You can go up, you can go down, and then left and right. Not an insane amount of mobility in the neck area, but you don't really get that either way for a ceratopsian. It's not like they can look around all over the place, as they've got a pretty large frill here to contend with. So I think the articulation is pretty much perfect for what you would want on a ceratopsian, and it works really, really nicely. Again, just perfect for stop motion. If you lead back here behind the frill, you can see again the rear of the horns look really good. You've got all kinds of darker tones there. A little bit of dry brushing, it looks like, potentially back there as well. Leading up here into the shoulder, you can see a few more bumps, kind of like osteoderm-like bumps leading up there. All kinds of really nice color variation. Again, as you can see, like slight variations of browns and even like grays, and I can almost make out like blues in certain areas. And when you get nice and close, you can see that the actual texturing of the skin also looks really nice. And as you lead down, you've got nice muscle definition in the front leg leading down into the foot sculpt. You can see the foot sculpt looks pretty cool. Again, definitely following that same similar style to what we had seen on the Tyrannosaurus Rex. As you lead up here to the top, you've got all kinds of bumps and osteoderms and stuff moving through, continuing to give it that really bumpy appearance overall. You also have this area of midsection articulation, so you can kind of move it left and right, up and down as well a little bit. Not a whole lot going on there either, but you never really have too much articulation in the midsection of any dinosaur figure, and if you do articulate it too far, sometimes it'll take away from the figure a little bit. So pretty nicely done as far as that goes. You also, of course, have articulation here in the leg, and you can see it can go forward and back. It can also kind of swivel a little bit like this, which really gives you even extra mobility. You also have a joint in the elbow and then down here in the wrist as well, and allows you to have some more nice articulation. As you lead back here, you can see more of those bumps and everything running along the top of the dinosaur, more of that really nice dark color scheme, which I must say I love. You've also got the hip articulation right here, which works pretty nicely. And then as you move down, you've got knee articulation, forward and back, as well as ankle articulation. So again, you have the same style of articulation that we saw on the first leg, and then as we continue to move along, you've got some more of those kind of like osteoderms moving down the course of the tail of the Styracosaurus, and then you've got more variation of color. You can even see a lighter tone here, kind of like a light bluish tone moving along the underside of the Styracosaurus, and you can see more of the incredible sculpt and coloration. Again, the actual texturing to the skin is really subtle the way it is sculpted out. Like, you almost can't even take notice to it until you get nice and close and really inspect it. But then you have more articulation as you move down the course of the tail. You can see again we've got all kinds of articulated joints moving down there. And if you take a look at the opposing side, you're going to see pretty much the same thing. Not a whole lot of difference going on over here compared to what we had seen on the initial side, of course, because it's a fully articulated figure. So it's up to you to kind of pose it and display it and articulate it however you prefer. But honestly, this looks just as awesome as the T-Rex did, maybe even cooler, because that head sculpt is insanely, insanely cool looking. But again, another extremely impressive release from Aulita Heroes, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, until recently I didn't even know that this company existed, but very quickly I am falling in love with their insanely cool stylized dinosaurs. As far as a size on our Styracosaurus, for a length from the beak to the tail, you're looking at about 9 inches or around 23 centimeters. And then for a height, the highest point would definitely be the horn there. On the frill, you're looking at about 3 3/4 inches or 9.5 centimeters for a size comparison. There is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Aulita Heroes Styracosaurus, and this clearly shows you that it's not a huge figure, but is still quite nicely sized overall. Definitely a nice convenient size. And then when it comes to the comparison I was personally most excited to see, we can see the Tyrannosaurus Rex here next to the Styracosaurus. Both of these models are from Aulita Heroes, so you can really see how, again, they follow that same similar appearance, that same similar style with their models, and I love it. I absolutely love these figures. I think they just have such a cool, such a unique and different look compared to anything else that's out currently, and it just creates such a fresh line overall, and allows me to appreciate them, I think, a little more than if it was just something that looks so similar to everyone else. And because they're so unique, it makes them so exciting. But you can see that they look super cool here next to each other. Again, imagine how cool this would be in like an old vintage dinosaur movie if some, people similar to like the Planet of the Dinosaurs, you crash land on some random planet and these are what the dinosaurs look like. Again, it could have been an incredible movie, but even still, these make an amazing diorama together. And then for another comparison, here is the Schleich Styracosaurus that they had recently released next to the Aulita Heroes version. You can see that these are actually pretty similar overall as far as the size goes, definitely sporting a very, very close size range. But for another comparison, there is the Batat version of the Styracosaurus now next to the Aulita Heroes version. So if you happen to have this Styracosaurus, might help to give you an idea of the size of the Aulita Heroes version. But for another comparison, here is the Beasts of the Mesozoic Zuniceratops next to the Styracosaurus from Aulita Heroes. I'm not going to bring in the Beasts of the Mesozoic Styracosaurus because obviously that figure is of a totally different size range compared to this version from Aulita Heroes, so I felt like that wouldn't be the best comparison. But the Zuniceratops being a similar size was a good comparison in my opinion because so many people have this figure. It should help to give you, again, a pretty rough idea of the size of this Aulita Heroes version. And then for one final comparison, we just have a Mattel Velociraptor here standing in for a size next to our Styracosaurus. Again, just to give you one last idea of a size and to show you that it's not a huge figure, but still is a really quite nicely sized figure overall, definitely very conveniently sized as a whole. So this Styracosaurus from Aulita Heroes is definitely another really cool release from them, and definitely another really neat as far as the design goes figure, and they were very good as far as their design goes with their T-Rex. It was pretty popular here on my channel. A lot of people were very excited about that figure, and I could see that same style here with the Styracosaurus, but maybe even a little bit more exaggerated. That head sculpt is absolutely a sight to behold. They have sculpted this out again, given it a really nice, very highly detailed appearance, but also quite the exaggerated, very Aulita Heroes style appearance, and I think it is phenomenal. The overall design of this is just honestly insane. They've sculpted it out in a way where, of course, it has that exaggerated look, but at the same time, it looks very evil, very dark and gritty, which I really like. The paint job as well, of course, continues to give us that appearance as we have some very dark tones of color used for it, but they have done a great job of applying many different tones of color to this as they did with their Tyrannosaurus, giving it a really nice realistic look, I think, as far as like the varying tones of color, making sure that it doesn't just look like a painted model. The actual coloration has more of a lifelike look to it because they've applied so many different tones of color in a really nice, realistic, and natural way. We also have tons of articulation, and it all works really nicely. Very, very smooth articulation. Again, pretty much perfect for stop motion or just creating really cool dioramas. The articulation, of course, does have those like gaps and stuff between the legs and everything, but I would definitely say that's kind of part of the Aulita Heroes charm. I really do like that now, especially now having my second figure. It's very cool the way that they do this because, again, even those kind of gap areas look different from so many other articulated dinosaurs that it helps to differentiate the Aulita Heroes line from so many others, and again, adds a very distinctive charm to the models. So without question, another awesome release from Aulita Heroes, and definitely something that I am beyond happy to add to my collection. So if you are interested in picking this up, I will include a link in the description to where you can do that right now on the Aulita Heroes Etsy shop. So make sure you check that link, go grab this super cool Styracosaurus, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.